Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about the Constitution of United States of America in great detail. So before discussing about the US Constitution in great detail, let us understand that what is the history of America. Talking about the American continents were not known to the people of Africa, Asia and Europe until the Christopher Columbus didn't discovered these two continents. It was only 1492 when these two continents were discovered by Christopher Columbus and the old world, technically speaking, Africa, Europe, and Asia, came to know that there are two more continents. And there were the people who were living in those continents, the South America and North America, the indigenous people who were termed as Red Indians by the European people. Later on, as they were, like not that good and not technologically advanced as compared to the European people, the European went to Latin America, mainly the Spain and Portugal. These two countries, these two European powers colonized the South America. Talking about the North America, the French and British forces colonized the most of the part of the North America, and United States was formerly the colony of British Empire. So it was 1776 when United States of America declared her independence. And the main reason was the lack of representation. You might be knowing about the statement, the famous slogan which was given by Thomas Jefferson, that there would be no taxation without representation. So Thomas Jefferson asserted that until and unless the American people are not going to get any representation in parliament, the American people are not going to pay any taxes at all. And this is how the 13 colonies, they merged together and they made a country called United States in 1776. Though initially the British government, the British Empire didn't recognize the independence of America, but later on, actually, it was recognized by the whole world. Talking about the constitution, before drafting the constitution, right, in 1787, if you talk about the current constitution, which has the 7 articles, it was drafted. And in drafting, the main role was played by the like James Madison. You can compare James Madison as a figure in India, Dr. Baba Sahab Ambedkar. As Baba Sahab Ambedkar is credited for drafting the Indian Constitution, in the same manner, James Madison is known as the father of American Constitution because he was the main figure who drafted the American Constitution, and also at the same time he promoted the Bill of Rights. You can again compare with our Indian figure, Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar also promoted the fundamental rights for Indians. Bill of Rights is nothing but a kind of fundamental right to American people. In fact, the fundamental right of Indian Constitution is influenced by the Bill of Right of the American Constitution. So we borrowed this idea from America itself. So in 1787, the drafting of the Constitution started in the Philadelphia Convention. But what was happening before this? This is also, important to understand. So what happened? The Continental Congress, which meet in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state, and in that state there is a place called York. At that place, the Continental Congress meet in 1777. As you know, the America became independent, asserted her independence in 1776. So there was a initial constitution which was not fit for America. So later on, they changed that constitution. In 1887, they drafted the new constitution. But in order to understand the new constitution, it is equally important to understand that what was the old constitution of the Continental Congress of 1776, which was actually drafted in York, right? It is not New York, it is just York, right? In Pennsylvania. So talking about this constitution, right, this is called the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation only gave the minimal power to the central government or the federal government. The federal government was only responsible for managing the foreign affairs, defending the country, and also it was also responsible for the currency, managing the money and the monetary policy. So the government was very weak. The government was not given, the responsibility or the authority to levy the taxes also. So the central government at that time, the federal government, according to the Articles of Confederation, so central government didn't had any power to levy any taxes. So that is why they felt later on that they need a strong constitution. By strong constitution, I mean they need a strong federal government, the central government, which could manage the crisis of America in future. That is why in 1787, again, the Philadelphia Convention met, and in Philadelphia Convention, they actually decided that they are going to draft another constitution, and drafting of the American Constitution took place in 1787. Now, there are few names which we have to remember, which is important, which played important role, drafting of the American Constitution. The first one is the first president of America, George Washington. Actually, George Washington helped this constitution to gain prominence in America. The constitution made popular by him. The constitution actually it was accepted by the common people with the effort of the George Washington. So he actually conveyed his ideas that this is a good constitution. And since he was a very popular figure during the War of Independence of 1776, so he had a lot of consensus in society. That is why he was able to gain a lot of acceptance on that constitution. Talking about the second figure, James Madison. So James Madison was the main person who drafted the American Constitution. So he is also called the father of the American Constitution because he was responsible for drafting of the Constitution. He also promoted the Bill of Rights, which is basically the fundamental rights of the American people. Talking about another person called, like Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was another person. This person was, he was responsible in order to deal with the crisis. If there would be disagreement between two or more delegates, right? Because there were the delegates from each and every state who were there in order to draft the Constitution of America. So if suppose the delegates of two different states, if they have a tussle or if they have conflict, so the main responsibility of Benjamin Franklin was to deal with this crisis, to make a compromise, to make a consensus, to make an agreement between them. So this was the main, the role of him. Now talking about the another figure, his name is Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton is the person who supported the strong constitution. That means the center must be given the more power. The federal government must be given the more power. Right. And Alexander Hamilton later on, he also wrote Federalist Paper. Federalist Paper is a very famous document which is in the history of America, which we must study, right? If I'll get the time, I'll make the video on Federalist Paper. If you are a student of UGC NET, then you can, remember this name. Alexander Hamilton is one of the writers, one of the authors of the Federalist Paper. And now let us come to the Constitution of America. Now talking about the Constitution of America, there are three pillars or three main feature, right, in Constitution of America. Actually, Constitution of America was a kind of model for rest of the world. And later on, the different countries followed the American model while they were drafting their own constitution, including India. So the first thing, there was supremacy of constitution, right? There was supremacy of constitution. Now, if you talk about the British constitution, British do not have any written constitution. And there is the supremacy of the parliament. They follow the concept of the parliamentary sovereignty. But talking about America, the America actually follow the supremacy of constitution. That means the law of land is supreme. Right. The second thing what you have to remember, they also gave the concept of the separation of power. So separation of power is a very important concept which emerged from the American Constitution. Separation of power means that there would be the three organs of the government, namely there would be legislature, executive, and judiciary, and they all would be doing their a specific task, their specific job. For example, legislature would be responsible in order to enact the laws, in order to formulate the laws. Talking about executives would be only and only responsible for implementing the laws. Talking about judiciary, if there would be any dispute, then judiciary will come over and try to tackle that dispute, try to adjudicate that dispute. So this is called the separation of power. Also, the American Constitution is based on the concept of federalism. What is the concept of federalism? There would be two levels of government. There would be a federal government, which is also called the central government in many countries, and there would be different state governments. As I told you that there are total 50 states in United States. So therefore, these 50 states of United States, they will have their own constitution. They will have their own rules and regulation. and the federal government will have its own constitution, which will be applicable, obviously on whole country. This is also we need to understand, right? So federalism is nothing but sharing of the power between the different level of government, the division of power between the different level of government. I hope you get this point. So federalism, separation of power, supremacy of constitution, then idea of check and balance. This is also a unique idea which was given by the American Constitution. What is check and balance? Like if you compare legislative, executive, or judiciary, then which is more supreme? Like which has the top order in the hierarchy? Talking about the British Constitution or the British Convention, the legislature is given more importance as compared to two other branches of government or organs of government. But in the case of America, they gave the concept of check and balance, and they said that they all are equal. The legislature, executive, and judiciary, they all are parallel and equal, and they are performing their own task in their own domain and purview. No one is supreme. And actually, if any of the organ would be making any mistake or deviating from the ideals of the constitution, the other two organs is going to have a check and balance that third organ. This is what the concept of check and balance is all about. Also, like there is a very unique concept which came from America, that is called the judicial review. Judicial review, actually, it assert the supremacy of constitution. If any state or if the federal government is making any law which is deviating from the ideals of constitution, the Supreme Court, the judiciary, has the power to declare that law as null and void. That means that law will not be applicable in the whole country. So this is what the like judicial review means. Also, like the Supreme Court of like America, it is also the same case in the India as well. The Supreme Court of America is also the highest interpreter and custodian of the Constitution. The Supreme Court of America is given the responsibility to interpret the Constitution. So these are some of the important features of the American Constitution, what you have to understand. Now, let us go to one by one to all the provision. Also remember, like in America, there is the concept of dual citizenship, unlike India. In India, you have a single citizenship. If I'm the citizen of Jharkhand, like I'm from Jharkhand state, this is a small state in India, right? So I will not have a separate like citizenship for Jharkhand and a separate citizenship for India. But this is not the case in America. If suppose you are a guy living in California, so you will have a citizenship of California as well as the federal citizenship of United States. So that is also unique in the American Constitution. So let us talk about the American Constitution. So there are the three, organs of government, as I told you, and they works on the separation of power, right? They have different responsibilities and authorities, and they all have to perform in their own sphere. So legislature will make the laws, implementing the laws would be the task of the executive, and the judicial branch would be, it would be interpreting the constitution. It would be responsible for the judicial review, and also if there would be any dispute, it would be adjudicating the dispute between two or more states, right? So this is what we need to understand. Now the next thing what we need to understand, that the Constitution of America was adopted on 17th September 1787, and there is a preamble and there is total 7 articles. So American Constitution is one of the more concise, one of the more precise constitution in the world, and it is highly effective. Talking about the Indian Constitution, when the Indian Constitution was originally written, the Indian Constitution had 395 articles. Talking about 2024, there are more than 450 articles in Indian Constitution. But talking about the American Constitution, there is only 7 articles. I'm not, like referring to the sub clauses of the article. If I'll count that way in the case of India, that would be actually more. That would be more than 6 or 700. But that is not the case in America. There are only 7 articles and there is one preamble. If you talk about the preamble talks about making union more strong and perfect. Also, it is talking about securing the liberty of each and every Americans. So liberty is the foremost principle, what the American value. This is also we need to understand. Now, the next thing what we need to understand about Article 1. Article 1 deals with the legislative branch. If you compare with India, the Indian Parliament, which is called Parliament, right? In same manner, the American Parliament is called US Congress, right? So as Indian Parliament has two houses, there is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. In same manner, the US Congress has two houses, that is the House of Representative and the House of Senate. I'm going to tell you their features, their role, their tenure, etc. in the next slide, right? So Article number 2, when you talk about Article number 2, it is dealing with the executive branch. Talking about that, who are the part of the executive? President is the part of executive, vice president is the part of executive. In fact, the attorney of the government, that means the lawyer, advocate of the federal government, is also the part of the union executive. This is what we need to understand. Also, the Article 3, it talks about the Supreme Court and other federal courts. Like there is like if you talk about India, the India has integrated judiciary. But it is not the case of America. America do not have the integrated judiciary. If your case is pending in any of the high courts of the state in India, you have a chance to appeal in the Supreme Court. And here the high court is also, taking the state laws into consideration and the federal laws in consideration while the high courts are making the judgment. And you could also file any suit. You could also file any petition, whether that is related to the federal law, that is the central law of India, or that is the state laws. But that is not the case in America. If, if any petition or any suit arises out of the state law, that has to be heard, that has to be, filed only in the high courts, right, within the state. You can't go to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is only dealing with the federal laws. Supreme Court is basically trying to maintain the federalism which is there in America, trying to maintain the rights of the states in America. This is what the main role of the Supreme Court of America is concerned. So Article 3 is dealing with the judiciary. Talking about Article 4, Article 4 is dealing with the relation between the state and the federal government. Mainly this is dealing with the federalism, as you can understand. Article 5 is dealing with the amendment of the Constitution. It is very tough to amend the American Constitution. As American Constitution was adopted in 1787, until now there are just 27 amendments in the American Constitution. On contrary, talk about India. The India has quite flexible provision in order to amend the Constitution. There has been total 106 amendments in the Indian Constitution till date, right? And Indian Constitution has been adopted just on 26th Jan in 1950. And I'm talking about a constitution which was adopted on 17th September 1787. And there is just 27 amendments actually, like what we could see right now, as of now. So it is very rigid. It is very tough to amend the American Constitution. The amendability is not that easy, not that flexible in the case of America. Now let us go to the next one. Article 6 is talking about that Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And therefore, the Article 7 is also asserting the principle of the rule of law, that no one is above the Constitution. The Constitution of America is supreme. That is the supreme law of land. Talking about Article 7, Article 7 talks about the process of ratification of Constitution. So when the Constitution was drafted by the Philadelphia Convention, right, in like Philadelphia Convention, right, with the help of James Madison, so it must be ratified by all the states, that all the states are accepting the American Constitution. So at that time, Article 7 provisions were followed, that how that would be ratified by the states. Okay. Now talking about the legislative branch. Now let me explain in detail, right? Talking about the legislative branch, there is the complete separation of power. Also remember that, there is the presidential form of government in America. Presidential form of government. In presidential form of government, the president is the head of state, also the head of government. The president is the supreme authority, I could say, that all the powers are lying in the hand of president. And uh, coincidentally, this year, the election of president is also going on in America, and Trump is there to contest the election, right? Okay, so let us come to the next part, right? There are two houses. That means the US Congress, which is the parliament of Congress, right? US Congress is bicameral in nature. The first house is called House of Representative, and second house is called Senate. So House of Representative, like it has 435 members total in House of Representative. Remember my point, the House of Representative is less powerful as compared to Senate. The Senate has more power as compared to House of Representative. That is also unique. If you compare with the Indian condition, in Indian condition, the House of Representative is equivalent to Lok Sabha. And on the other hand, the Senate is equivalent to Rajya Sabha. And in India, the Lok Sabha has more and more power. But that is not the case in America, because there is the classical example of the federalism in America, but we are the quasi-federal country as talking about India, right? So there is 435 voting members are there, and it depends upon the population. That the California is a big state, so from California there would be more members, more representation of California in the House of Representative as compared to any small state like Indiana. So this is what we need to understand. Members are only elected on the basis of universal adult franchise. That means, every adult person could vote, right? Irrespective of race, irrespective of religion. So, just universal adult franchise simply means that everyone is allowed to vote and there is no discrimination on the basis of gender or race or anything like that. Okay. And actually for 2 years they are being elected, and after 2 years they again, what happens, there would be election and they can contest the election for re-electing themselves. So it is not the case that if a person is becoming the member of House of Representative, he could only become the member of House of Representative for 2 years. He may be for 10 years, but he has to, contest the consequent elections for that. So this is what we need to understand. Okay. The House of Representative also has the exclusive power to initiate the revenue bill and also impeach the federal officials. So whatever the federal officials are there, officials means, the the government officers of the central government, right? That is called the federal official. So they can impeach, they could remove the federal official. Also, the revenue bill will be only initiated in the House of Representative. The same is the case in India as well. As you know about the money bill is only being introduced in the Lok Sabha. That is equivalent to the House of Representative rather than the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha do not have much power on the money bill. Same is the case in America as well. This is what we need to understand, right? Also, based on the census, the counting of the population happens in every 10 years, and based on the census, the seats in House of Representative is being adjusted. It is being increased if there would be the need, right? The leader of the House of Representative, or the person who is presiding the House of Representative, he is known as Speaker. He or she is known as Speaker, and the Speaker is actually elected by the member of the House of Representative. It is equivalent to the Speaker of Lok Sabha, which is in India, right? Talking about Senate, this is the special case in America. If you talk about the Indian Rajya Sabha, the Rajya Sabha in India, it has different representation from different states based on the population. For example, the Uttar Pradesh, which is the most populous state in India, has the representation of 31 people in Rajya Sabha. On the other hand, the Sikkim only has the representation of one person. But that is not the case in America. In Senate, the estates are being represented. The interest of estates are being, taken care of. And here it does not depends upon the population. If a state would be big as California or the state would be small as Indiana, it does not matter. From every state, there would be two Senate members who would be representing their state in the federal legislature. So therefore, there are total 100 members. I hope you get the point. Now, senators, they have the tenure of 6 years. The same is the case in Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha also has, the term of 6 years, the member of Rajya Sabha, right? However, in every 2 years there are the elections. Here also in India also, 1/3 of the member of Rajya Sabha, they retire in every 2 years, and again for those 1/3 of the members, again the elections are taken place. Same is the case in America as well. In fact, we have taken this from America only, right? That how my Rajya Sabha is going to work right now in India, that has been borrowed from America. In fact, as in the case of India, the vice president is also the chairman of the Rajya Sabha. In the same manner, The Vice President of America would be the chairman or the presiding officer of the House of Senate. This is what we need to understand. The Senate is very powerful. Like, we will understand what is the role of Senate. The Senate actually, it confirms the presidential appointment. This is very important. It is ratifying the treaties which is being conducted by the president with another country in the foreign relation. Also, you have to understand, if any appointments of judges in Supreme Court are made by the President of America, the same has to be ratified. The same has to be actually confirmed by the Senate. Then only the member would be the person would be the judge of the Supreme Court. This is what we need to understand. I hope you are getting my point. You are understanding that how this constitution works. Also, if there is the impeachment of the president, so the president is really guilty for any offense or not, it is also being investigated by the members of Senate. Right, this is also important. And Senate has a greater role in the impeachment of the president. Both the houses have the role. I'm not denying that the House of Representatives does not have any role, but Senate has more role in the impeachment of the president. Okay. Now, the next thing what we need to understand about the legislative branch is the power of Congress. So power of Congress is given in the section 8 of the Article 1. So Congress could, levy the tax. Congress could, regulate the commerce, could regulate the money, coin, declare the war, maintain the armed forces, everything can be done. Talking about the legislative process, how a bill is becoming an act, how the law is being made in America. So the legislative process is very similar to India. First of all, the bill will be introduced in either of the house, either in Senate or in the House of Representative. Now, once the bill is in the house, what is happening? It is sent to the review committee. So the review committee, what the review committee does, review committee have the expert of the subject to which the bill is related to. And after that, they give their own view about that bill. After that, there is floor debate and voting is done, right? The voting on the bill is done, that it is being approved by the particular house or not. The same steps to be followed in other house as well. If a bill has been initiated in the House of Representative, these steps to be followed in House of Representative, the same to be sent in the Senate and same to be followed again before sending the bill to the presidential approval. If the bill is actually originating in Senate, then these steps to be followed in Senate, and again the bill will go in the House of Representatives, same would be followed there as well, and then it would be sent for the presidential approval. After the presidential approval, the president may not approve the bill. This is also what you need to understand. The president also have the pocket veto. The president could keep the bill in his office or in his pocket without taking any action on that. But the pocket veto is, it is for the limited amount of time. The president can pocket a bill only for 10 days. In the case of the Indian Constitution, no time period has been mentioned that for how much time a bill can be, kept in the pocket of the president in the case of the in the case of the Indian context. Right. So we say the veto power, the pocket veto of Indian president is, more as compared to the American president. This is what we need to understand. Now, there are exclusive power. We already talked about this, right? In order to confirm the presidential appointment, the Senate has the important role. It also has the exclusive power to ratify the treaty, any, deal which you have with any other foreign government, right? Also, the conduct the trial for the impeachment of the president. Also, to confirm the appointment of judges in the Supreme Court. And the exclusive power of the House of Representative is the revenue bill, right? The revenue bill, which is the money bill in the context of India, is only being introduced in the House of Representative. Also, the federal officers, the bureaucrats, would be impeached by the House of Representatives. So it is the exclusive power. Now, talking about the legislative process, I have explained how it works, right? So no need to again go through this, right? What the president could do after the bill has been passed by both the houses. So if the bill is sent to the president, who can sign it into a law or veto it or can take no action. And if the president is taking no action, he could only do this for 10 days. I hope you get the point, right? If vetoed, Congress can override the veto. with two-third vote in both the chambers. If suppose a bill is being vetoed by the president, then again the veto power of the president can be overridden. It is not absolute. And if again by the two-third majority, both the chambers of the American Congress is again passing the same bill, the president has no right to veto that. The president has to give the assent to that bill. This is what we need to understand. Now let us go to the executive branch. Now in executive branch, it is also similar to India. We have the president, who is the head of the state as well as the head of government. There is vice president. Also, there is the cabinet. Cabinet is similar to the council of minister in India. They are called the secretaries. So there is the secretary of state, who is equivalent to the home minister in India. Secretary of defense, who is equivalent to the defense minister in India. Right. So there is cabinet and there is president. There is also the vice president. Vice president is also, like remember one important point, right? If president is removed from the office, or if the president has died due to unforeseen causes, right, then the vice president become the president and continue for the residual of the tenure, like remaining time period. This is not the case in India. If the president is dead in India, then vice president can take over as the charge of the president, but within 6 months the re-election of the president has to be done. But that is not the case in the context of America. If the president is dead, or if president is not available, the vice president could become the president, could take the charge of president for the remaining time period. I hope you get this point, right? Also, the vice president do not have any voting right in Senate. It only have the casting vote. That means the tie-breaking vote. The same is also the case of the vice president of India as the chairman of Rajya Sabha. So this is not different at all, right? So president also serve as the commander in chief of the armed forces. Same is the case with the American, like Indian president as well. Our Indian president is also considered to be the commander in chief of the armed forces. But Indian president do not have the real power, do not have the de facto power. See, only enjoys the de jure power, but it is not the case in case of America, in the context of America. The president enjoy the real power in the case of America. He also appoint the heads of the federal agencies, including the cabinet. He also represent US in foreign relation and treaties, right? Vice president succeed president in the event of death, resignation or removal. I have told you about the cabinet. It is like council of minister, which is in India, right? Now let us come to the responsibilities. So responsibilities are same. There are few things which I didn't discuss, right? That means, also the president has the power to appoint the judges, but the same appointment to be confirmed by the Senate, right? It is not that just president can appoint the judge in the Supreme Court in his favor and nothing can be done by the Senate. Actually, the Senate is powerful. Senate will confirm that the appointment of any judge is malicious, is that malified or bona fide. We need to understand that. Now let us go to the next one, the executive orders. The president also give orders to the federal government, the officers of the federal government, the central government, to perform their duties. Now represent the America in the case of the foreign relation, like that. I already have talked about this, right? Then there is the federal bureaucracy. Talking about federal bureaucracy, the president is the head of the federal bureaucracy. He actually, manages all the bureaucrats at center, right? And actually, these federal bureaucrats, they are responsible for implementing laws and policies in America, right? Like there are different departments, like Department of Environment is there, Defense is there. Okay, then there is Department of States, and each department is being supervised by the secretaries. Like there is Secretary of State, like secretaries is equivalent to ministers, right? And they all are under the supervision of the president. So president is keeping a kind of surveillance on them. Now the same thing has been repeated, right? Now talking about the judicial branch. So as I told you that there is independent judiciary, there is no integrated judiciary in America, right? So Supreme Court is only going to hear the cases which is related to the constitution or the federal laws or the dispute between the two states. Supreme Court also has the power of judicial review. If any law made by the federal government is not aligned with the constitution, that could be declared as null and void by the Supreme Court of America. Now let us go to the next thing. Supreme Court is the highest court in United States. It has 9 judges, including the Chief Justice. That means there is the composition of 1 plus 8. 8 are the judges of Supreme Court. 1 is the Chief Justice of Supreme Court. The President is appointing the judges, and that is confirmed by the Senate. They serve for the lifetime term. In the case of India, the Supreme Court judges are being retired at the age of 65. But the judges of Supreme Court in America, they could be the judge till their death, because the experience is actually unmatchable. You cannot buy the experience from the market. So the judges, when they're spending more and more time in judiciary, they have more experience of law. They gain more and more wisdom. So American Constitution is in the favor of taking the benefit out of their wisdom as they are serving for their nation as the part of judiciary, but not the same, but not the case in India. Same is not the case in India, right? This is what I try to say. Now, over here, we will discuss about the judicial review. As I already told, like judicial review is a principle. If any law not aligned with the constitution of any country, the law is being, rejected, is being declared unconstitutional, null and void by the Supreme Court of that country. The same is true for America as well. So there was a landmark case, Marbury and Madison in 1803. And there this concept of judicial review came into being. It was not explicitly written. It was not directly written in the Constitution of America. Talking about the Constitution of India, there is the instances of the judicial review in the Indian Constitution. Talking about Article 13 of Fundamental Rights, Article 13 Clause A in Indian Constitution, talk about the judicial review. That if any law enacted by any state government or the central government, if that is against the fundamental rights, the High Court and Supreme Courts, they has the power that they could declare that null and void. That is the case in India. Understanding my point? But explicitly, judicial review was not written in the Indian Constitution. This is the result of the judicial wisdom. This is the result of the judicial activism. The judiciary propounded this concept. Later on, it was borrowed by India as well, because it was in 1803 this concept came into being, and we were drafting our constitution in 1945 and later on. I know like what is the correct date. Okay, I'm just giving one rough example, right? So, in 1946, the cabinet mission plan came in India. Like the international student will also be watching this video. That's why I'm not talking more about the Indian constitution and Indian dates, because they will get confused, because they don't have to learn about the Indian history anyway or Indian constitution. Their sole purpose is to understand the American constitution, but I'm teaching in such a way that I'm comparing the Indian constitution. At the same time, they could also gain some knowledge about India. The India is the largest democracy in the world. If you have some knowledge about India, that would be the beneficial for you as well. Now, talking about the lower federal courts, each state they have the federal courts, right? Like they are called the circuit courts. So circuit courts are, like there are first of all district courts you need to understand, and many district they combine together, right? And uh, on the bunch of the district, you could see that there is a circuit court, and circuit court is actually hearing the appeals from the district court, right? And there is something called high court in each and every state of America, and your cases will end in the high court. You can't go to the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court will only deal with the cases which would be related to the federal law, not like related to the state law, not like related to the dispute arising out of a law which was made by California or maybe Texas, Florida, or any other state. Let us go to the next one. I told you everything about this. It has the power of judicial review, interpreting the constitution. Supreme Court cases are very important, right? Supreme Court decisions are important, and they are they are recorded for the testimony and for the perpetual memory. So that same could be, used in the legal interpretations. Also, appointment and tenure. I told you about the appointment and tenure, right? So, this is what we had to study. I have told you everything in detail. I told that check and balance is one of the very important principle, right? So if you will see, like all the organs have the check and balance. If executive is trying to like override anything, or uh, is trying to have some adventure, is trying to surpass its jurisdiction or its power or authorities, then the other two organs, and that is the legislature and judiciary, could have a check on executive. Same goes with everybody, with legislature also, with executive also, with judiciary also. Same thing I have written in check and balances. I hope you understood brief about the American Constitution. It is not that easy to understand the American Constitution. Like, there are a lot of concepts, the different things what you need to understand. But this is a kind of short video what I have made on American Constitution. I would be dealing more with American Constitution. If you are from America and if you have taken your paper as AP US government and politics, US politics and government, then you are at the right place. You can go to our website noblelearners.in. We have well qualified political science tutors from India. They could help you to score good credit in AP US politics and government examination. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, viewer. If you like this video, then you could give a thumbs up. You could subscribe my channel in order to motivate so that I could make such more videos. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day ahead.